Hello, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of Last Best Hope for Conversation, your Babylon 5 podcast. Joining me in the CNC is Lou.
Hello, everyone.
Karen.
Hello.
And I am Jesse Jackson. Today we are talking GROPOs, episode 10 of season 2, a task force of ground troops led by Dr. Franklin's father, General Richard Franklin, is assembled at Babylon 5, leading to some friction. This was written by Larry DiTilio, and as I said last episode, this is one I missed the first time in TNT, and there are a couple of nice moments, but overall, I think this is an episode that if you had to skip, would be okay to skip. Karen, let's start with you. Quick thoughts.
Yeah, definitely a one-off. There are some things mentioned, and I mean mentioned in this episode that relate to the overall arc, but could definitely be left out. I mean, it's not anything that is worth noting. The one standout is Paul Winfield.
Yes.
Otherwise, it's definitely one that you could gloss over. So I'll get into my real opinion when we get to it.
Okay. And Lou, how about you?
Well, to Weird Al Michael Jackson paraphrase, filler.
Yep. Definitely.
And that's it.
I really thought Paul Winfield was good. And Marie Marshall, who played Dodger, I thought was very charming and very cool. It is very much kind of over the top. Oh, war is horrible and people die, and kind of there are more subtle ways to do this. But yeah, overall, I didn't like it. I thought it was okay. But so, and by the way, Marie Marshall is from Dallas. She grew up in Dallas. She used to do car commercials with Randy White, who was a famous Dallas cowboy. They called him the Manster, half man, half monster. And she would do car things with him. And I really liked her a lot in this show. All right. So I do think we start with a great line. Traitors, troublemakers, and ambassadors all tucked snugly in their bed. I loved Claudia's line about that. All of a sudden these warships come and they have an extra 25,000 people needing billets. And all of a sudden, because Franklin's dad is a general, he outranks everyone. So even though it's Sheridan Station, he gets to call the shots. So Lou, let's start with you. This storyline reminds me a little bit of The Great Santini, which was a wonderful book and a movie from Pat Conroy about a son having a Marine father, a Marine fighter pilot as a father. What are your thoughts on Franklin's dad and their relationship and kind of this going to almost, this feels like a Vietnam story, right? Like we're going to help someone in a civil war.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I kind of got the vibe, and this is probably a little known TV movie with it was called Tribes with Jan Michael Vincent and Darren McGavin, and it's kind of in that vein where there's, even though those two characters weren't father and son, but it was like one was Jan Michael Vincent was a hippie, and McGavin was a by the book career officer, and they clashed, but they came to an understanding after as the movie progressed as well. And this is basically the same plot that we're getting here. As Karen mentioned off the top, seeing Paul Winfield is always great. I mean, I remember him especially from Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. But he's been in a lot of great dramas. I think one was called Pounder or maybe Sounder. I can't remember off the top of my head if I've got that title right.
I think Sounder,
with Cicely Tyson maybe.
Yes.
And I think that was a really good performance from him. So he's a good actor. You can obviously see that this is after The Wrath of Khan. He's definitely changed his appearance a fair bit, but he still has that gravitas that works fairly well. I guess these scenes would have worked better for me if I was more empathetic to the Franklin character, and that's a big problem for me. And which is, if there was any aspect of the show that was going to work, it would have been that aspect. But because of the baggage that I've got with Franklin, it doesn't come off as something impactful to me. And it was nice that they reconciled. But I also kind of thought at the end of the episode, yeah, it's always the poor that pay the price for the rich and the higher uppers, and that was, I think, inadvertently a demonstration of that. Franklin's father's fine, but all the characters that we came to know during the episode, they're all gone, and that's war is hell, and the poor people pay for it.
Yeah, Karen.
Yeah, I mean, we can't go this whole episode without talking about Darmok, right? Mm-hmm. Paul Winfield played Captain Dathan in the Star Trek The Next Generation episode Darmok.
Yeah.
And that was one of his roles that really kind of cemented his acting ability for me, because it was touching, and he went through a million emotions. And I wish he had brought that kind of performance to this episode. But I think for what it was, he's the standout in this episode. And I would like to think that, it's the Franklin that I want him to be. That would have made that storyline super impactful. It's the Franklin that treated the lurkers, off the books, the Franklin that kind of helps with stuff that isn't by the book. It's that Franklin that I would have wanted to see in the storyline. So there are so many little nits that I put in that storyline that make it not up to the standard that I would love it to be. But yeah, and the major problem I have with this episode, and it's going to sound so stupid, is how did those guys all die in the same place? I mean, they just pan through and they're all like laying next to each other. What a coincidence. Out of, 25,000 or 250,000 troops or whatever, they're all in the same spot. And that, that takes me out of it, but I get why they had to do it that way in order to show us that they were gone. And the kissing was over the top. Very weird kissing, I thought. So, yeah, I mean, there's lots of little things that I feel like made this episode less than it could have been. And I get the overarching message of the episode. There's a couple, war is hell, and then the importance of family, even if you don't all agree. And so there are two things that it actually does get across, those messages.
Yeah.
But for me, it could have been so much. I think to myself, it could have been so much better than this. And that's what kind of makes it fall down, in my opinion.
First off, I remember that movie, Lou, and wasn't it at the end after Jan Michael Vincent dies, and the drill sergeant had drawn some kind of bird or something, right? Mm-hmm. And he did want to show that soft side, and he posts it right at the end. That image this with me. The other thing I thought is I never could do. Jan Michael Vincent talked about that they had to hold up buckets of sand. Yep. And he said, by using your meditation, you will go away and you will be able to hold longer. I tried to do that and never could. My arms got tired. I had not thought of that movie forever.
Yep.
Yeah, I think the Susan and Franklin discussion about fathers was really well done. I think the command staff, knowing that this wasn't just a coffee and cake run, but they couldn't tell anyone, was an interesting dynamic. And her telling Franklin, hey, you need to make this right, was nice. I did love, his dad, call your mother and sisters, just this. And I think back of the great AT&T commercial with Paul Bryant, right? That says, have you called your mother today? I sure wish I could call mine, was really beautiful. I also keep thinking of, this was a line in a Peter David novel where a general said, I just wince I just wish one time when someone said, with all due respect, what they followed actually would be something respectful. Because they always that with all due respect, you're crazy, General. This won't work. And the whole idea that this isn't going to be as easy as you want. I think Paul Winfield and Sheridan had some nice moments talking back and forth about, the cost of war and what we do. It does push the end, right? Where he and the sergeant major are alive. You see the sergeant major kind of has a bandage on his head, but they're going. And I think you've got a fair nitpick, Karen. In my mind, they had moved the bodies to a central place.
Okay.
And that could be why, they're there.
Yeah, because they are listed on the roster as being casualties. Okay.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's still a kind of minor. I mean, I think.
Yeah. No, it's not a big deal, but
yeah,
it's one of those things that takes me out of the story again.
Right.
It puts me in the mind of why couldn't they do it some other way?
Yeah. The other thing, we do meet a couple of the others. I think it's kind of funny. The two Marines, the GROPOs, are with our fighter pilot, and he has a funny line. Once I get a ladder, I'm going to pick up that. They had some nice back and forth.
And we get scenes with Keffer finally living up to his credit at the beginning of the episode.
Yes, we do. And sad to say, this might be one of his best episodes.
Oh, and
that's how little he is. Yeah.
Oh.
We see that there's still prejudice against the Minbari, and the question is, how well do people know that Delenn has changed? That would make sense. I think all that's just going. I do want to talk a little bit about Dodger and Michael. I think she has a lot of chemistry. I think their relationship is done pretty well, considering it's a one-off episode where, I realize it's probably unrealistic that she broke ranks to kiss him, but that kind of was nice. So let's start with you, Karen. What do you think of our ill-fated lovers?
Again, the kissing was way over the top. I mean, could they have mashed their faces together any more than that?
Yeah.
But I did appreciate a lot of things about that storyline. Number one, it's more of Garibaldi and his emotions, which is good. Him mentioning his ex, and also I'm not good enough for her is definitely Talia, right?
Yes, so, it's got to be, right?
Right. So we hear that, he has a thing for Talia, which hasn't really been confirmed. I mean, 100%. Right. So there's that. And the fact that, he has all this baggage and he can't get out of his head about it. So he doesn't feel like it's healthy for him to sleep with someone else. And which is refreshing that the woman is like, I just want to have sex.
Yeah. I wasn't looking to set up house. Like I could be, her line, I hope I don't hear the bullet that kills me.
Right.
Right. This is truly, tomorrow we may die, tonight, we party.
Right. And it's turning things on its head. I love when that happens, when, the guy is the one who is all feely about everything. And it's the woman that's just like, okay, I don't care about all that. Yeah. And I did like her as a character. I love the fact that in the fights, she was all in. She was punching people and, getting into the scrum. Yeah. Where Garibaldi was like pushing people away, go hit him, don't hit me. So I did like that storyline. And again, in theory, if it was executed better, if it was in a better episode, I think it would have been more impactful. Again, I mean, I hate to keep saying that, but
no. I think you're fair.
I really do feel like that is kind of, it would have been a really great story beat for Garibaldi if, this episode was executed better.
Okay. Lou, how about you?
Pretty well echo everything that Karen said. I did like the actor. I thought she did a great job. I didn't read that scene about Garibaldi the way Karen did. I thought he was referring to his ex on Mars when he was talking about.
One of them was.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. And then he said, and then there's this other girl that I'm just not good enough for.
Okay, well,
It was too.
I didn't catch that. I thought he was talking about the same person. But that puts a bit of different spin on it because I thought Garibaldi's reaction was weird. He he's a former Gropo himself, right? So he would know her mindset and what she was looking for. So I don't understand why he would take her all the way back to his quarters and then all of a sudden have this revelation that I can't do this because I'm still emotionally mired with these other previous relationships or whatever. So I didn't like his reaction in that scene. I thought it was, I don't know, soap opera-ish or whatever you want to call it. I just thought it was lame. I just think he should have gone along with that scene because he had gone that far already. So
you need to read more romance novels.
Yeah, I know. But I think they were just trying to set up the unrequited passion at the end of the episode because she didn't survive. So it was okay. I agree with Karen. In a better episode, it would have had more impact. But I have no qualms with her acting. I thought she was really good. Unlike the guy that played the Sergeant Major Plug, Ryan Cutrona, who apparently went on to do some big work on Mad Men and some other shows. But his characterization to me was a pale imitation of R. Lee Emery from Full Metal Jacket. So he was just he was just a buffoon, a cartoon character, and every scene that he was in, I just cringed watching him.
Okay. Yeah, he was way over the top. I did, however, like Ken Foray as PFC Large, the big black guy. He was in Terminator, which is amazing. He was in Halloween. And also he has a connection to Bruce Boxleitner. Okay. He was in a couple episodes of Scarecrow and Mrs. King, where he played another agent that came in to help out with some stuff. So I don't know if that's how he got the role, but I don't care. I think he's a good actor. I thought he was really good as the boisterous soldier, lifetime soldier kind of dude.
Yeah.
That whole part with Kefir and the roommates, I thought was good as well. I mean, I don't have any problem with their scenes at all. I thought it was almost underplayed a little bit. And I think that's because it was in comparison to the other stuff. The over the top drill sergeant, his acting was not great in this.
Yeah.
But yeah.
So a couple of minor things. Jane, the ISN anchor, actually is being used over and over again. She ends up being on 10 episodes. I just checked on IMDb. And so it will be interesting when we go back. We see Dodger again. I will not tell you how or why, but it would be interesting when you see her again if you would like this storyline a little bit more.
Okay.
So I'll leave that. That's just kind of a lamppost. Yes. So, yeah, I think this is very much just kind of a, we talk a little bit about the Centauri Narn War, having to pick sides. I just sent you an email, Karen. I don't know if you got it from Texas Alashak. I always never know when to forward you guys the emails because I'm like, I don't know if they've seen it yet. But she brought up a fact that she thinks it's a heavy-handed attempt at foreshadowing to go, oh, the defense grid could take on a warship. Oh, wow, we could take on a warship.
Yeah,
they'll ever have to take on a warship.
Yeah, it's definitely telegraphing.
Yeah.
And it was good to see that they already had these defenses. It's just they really beefed them up in this episode. Yeah. And also, Susan, do you not understand that when you say something like all is quiet, that is when all hell breaks loose.
So one of the things I do, we just talked about before we hit record, is, my day job is we do roadside assistance in the RV industry, and we never use the S word. It sure is slow. We will say, boy, it seems quiet, or volume seems less
lower than normal.
Yes, but we never say that. Just on another note, this is in the Lurker's Guide to Babylon 5, the shortest JMS speaks, I think, ever. There is only 3 things that he says. 1, this was way over budget. He does say that Talia was the woman Garibaldi was referring to, and everything in the battle sequence was CGI, no models despite the shadows. So
I thought for sure that was models.
Yeah. So, yeah. All right. So any other thoughts about it? I agree with you guys. This is just kind of, it was there.
Yeah. And it brought up some stuff that I'm assuming comes up later.
Yeah.
And maybe, you know, gives us a little bit more of the character of some of the main characters. So,
yeah.
And it allows Keffer to be in episodes.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Yeah. I guess it's just hard to reconcile the fact that of what was shown that day, there was 25,000 troops being brought on board the station.
Yeah.
That was hard to reconcile. I realize that they're on a TV budget, but yeah, that was weird. And it's just in general, like, I'm hoping that these kind of episodes are far and few between for the rest of the season, because you and the listeners have been building up seasons 2 through 5 as being these really great things. We're a third of the season in, and there's only been really 2-3 really standout episodes so far. So maybe my expectations were built up too much, but so far this is better than season 1 at this point, I guess you could say, but it's not leaps and bounds better. So throw the hate at me, listeners, but that's how I'm feeling right now. I want some more episodes like the previous one that we got that were like, wow. But this is like, you go to that level and you drop down to like a gully, and it's, what's going on here? I thought we were now we're starting to finally fire on all cylinders, and this is not what I expected. And like you said, it's a bad timing of this episode. Probably would have played better if it had been before the previous episode, but que sera, sera.
Okay. Very nice. All right. I'm going to start. I'd give this a 7 out of 10 barroom fights, just because I know why she comes back. So that's not fair, but just I can't unthink what I know.
Sure.
So Lou, how about you?
I'm going to give this 6.5 Paul Winfield spectacles.
Nice. He did look good in the glasses.
Yeah,
Karen,
he did.
How about you?
I think you guys are really high on this one, to be honest. I'm going to give it 5, and I almost raised my hand because I was sure that's where Lou was going.
Yeah.
5 really, really wet kisses.
All right. You'll never know what you missed. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
I do. I've had some boyfriends like that.
Yes.
It's unpleasant.
Yeah. All right. Hey, Karen, you want to read Texas Shock's email?
I will. She says, I'm sorry, I'm assuming it's a she. I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think it is too, but I don't know. Correct this.
So he slash she says, what happens when the population of Babylon 5 increases by a full 10%? A lot of major headaches. Nothing of real note occurs here, just giving audiences a break after a game-changing episode. I would be okay without a break. I don't know about you two.
Yeah, exactly.
The ramifications of the war are discussed, but it doesn't have a direct effect on the events on the station. One thing to keep an eye out for going forward, there will be occasions where Franklin channels his father. Okay. Also, on that note, and I forgot to mention last time, you might notice Rangers in the background from time to time. Usually they're just background extras, but sometimes they have speaking parts. Okay.
Cool.
This is, I think, probably Keffer's best episode in the entire season. It's the first time we really it's the first time we really take time to get to know him. And we have a mention of Ms. Connolly, the Dockers union rep. Again, not much of consequence here, just acknowledgement of recent events and one rather heavy-handed attempt at foreshadowing. Could be Chekhov's defense grid and be any more obvious. Ivanova even points out it will enable them to take on a warship. And if that isn't obvious enough, Sheridan seals it by saying, hopefully we won't have to. It's inevitable now. At some point, B5 will have to take on a warship. I kind of wish it had been a little more subtle. Anyway, that aside, I found it enjoyable for what it is. This is the Texas Unlashock signing off.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Well said. Any for our last episode, any feedback you want to share from the YouTube?
Sure. So this one's episode 8, A Race Through Dark Places, the Walter Koenig episode. And Chris M's says, fun fact, the DVDs of seasons 2 to 5 have blooper reels hidden in the extra content. Obviously, don't go looking for them until you've seen each season. I can't tell you where to find them yet, as it's a potential spoiler. That's interesting. Did you know that, Jesse? You have the DVDs longer than I've had.
Maybe. I got the DVDs after I'd seen the whole series, so that's where maybe. Okay. Yeah.
And then we get back into Babylon 5 space requirements, which covers, Simon talks about living quarters, space being at a premium. And then Nathan says Karen's rant on the water issue was amazing and very much warranted. Simon
good.
says not really, because it's been established that B5 was built on a shoestring budget and is chronically underfunded and understaffed. And Karen responded, said, I know it's ridiculous I focus on the scene. It just takes me out of the story. And then Simon says, same reason there's dripping water in the Nostromo. Yeah. Interesting. But that's a refinery ship. I can kind of understand that. That's a bit
but
different.
It was dripping there. Yeah. And it's pouring.
Yeah.
Anyway,
condensation is one thing. Niagara Falls is another.
Right.
I get you. Yeah. IffyFX says, if they go meh about the coming of shadows, I would suggest take a walk on the other side of the airlock. Just shut it down. There's no point in continuing. Well, fortunately, even though that episode hasn't gone up yet, we all loved that episode. And
and I told him that too. So
yeah.
And then if he says, so the humans created the Psychors, but who created the telepaths and why? The suspense. Did the humans create Psychors or did the telepaths create Psychors?
The humans, remember, because Garibaldi said we were afraid of them, so we put them all in, we created the Psychor and kind of put them together. And then because they were alone, they ended up, finding we now created our own problem.
Mm-hmm. And Iffy obviously has quite a thing for Psychor because he's got like 3 comments in a row here about them, and one's a reference to X-Files, which it's a timestamp, so I'm not quite sure what he's.
It's about them having to put characters together in a love thing.
Oh, okay. And then he says, to what extent telepaths can read or influence other races will be addressed in the future very explicitly. That would be very welcome.
Yep.
Babylon 5 doesn't do explicit very often.
Yeah.
And he's talking about, I guess, how Psychor handles rogue telepaths. He said that it doesn't matter what you know or don't know. Psychor does not tolerate rogue telepaths, period. They are either brought into the corps, or they are drugged to repress their abilities, or they are fugitives, or they are dead. There's no other option.
Yeah.
Then he references the station is the size of a small town. Any town of 250,000 people is going to have bad neighborhoods. You'd think every drop of water counts on a space station, though. That's what I think our point was.
Exactly.
I like Walter as a villain. Bester doesn't see himself as a villain, and those are the best villains for sure.
They truly are, aren't they?
Yes. And then Texas is in with a episode was written by GMS, where the episode where Franklin was dismissive of lurkers was written by someone else. And given that said episode is generally one we try not to think about, I'd say Franklin here is the actual one.
But it's hard for us to unsee that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I think that's the only downside. Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you're watching them in a continuous stream. It's still relatively fresh in your mind.
Exactly.
And then Chrism's saying that must be something more about the Minbari. From the leaks, at one point we hear technicians say they frequently have to repair water pipes that the lurkers have tapped into. And if one of the reasons Franklin established his clinic and down below was to help process the fugitive, if Dr. Rosen had been able to keep that machine in her own service, might he have eventually brought her into it? It does make one wonder. Oh, that's a good point, actually. Yeah. There are Minbari there all the time. Yes, but there are no Minbari that look the way Delenn does. Yeah, it's true enough.
Yes.
And not only is it Minbari with hair wearing human clothes, she's breaking bread with John Starkiller Sheridan. Good point.
Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Point. Yeah.
So
that's it.
I'm assuming that's in reference to the turning heads in the restaurant.
Yes,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good point. Thank you all for your feedback. It's muchly appreciated.
Yes. And if someone wants to leave us feedback, how can they, Lou?
You can go to YouTube and look for Lou's Reviews, where you'll find all our Babylon 5 podcasts, as well as our JKLM Medium podcasts, where we've done one-off series. So far, we've done Devs, Station 11, Midnight Mass, and we're currently working on the English, which is on Amazon Prime, and I highly recommend that you check it out. And also, you can find my episodes of the Writers Interview podcast there, and on Twitter, I'm at Lou W. Sitzma or S King Podcast.
Karen?
I am at Elevaria on the Twitter machine, and aliesstuff.com is my blog.
And I am at Jesse Jackson DFW on Twitter. Our email address, if you want to send us an email, is jklb5podcast@gmail.com. Go to iTunes, rate and review us. That would make us very happy. And we will be back next week with a new episode that I think my cohorts will like a little bit better. It
won't be hard to do that.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
All Alone in the Night. By the way, I looked at the remaining episodes while you were talking, Lou.
Mm-hmm.
I think I will argue the second half finishes strong. There's been some good episodes in there. So
okay.
I hopefully at the end of when we finish season 2, you go, okay, it did end up a little stronger. Hopefully.
Okay.
So I see that looking at the titles, there's a few that deal with like day turning to night, All Alone into the Night, The Long Twilight Struggle, The Fall of Night.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
There's a theme.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The dark before the light.
Yeah. All right. Thank you, Lou. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, listeners. Please come back next week. And in the meantime, be kind, be safe, and we will talk to you soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
Take care, everyone. Bye-bye. And see.